Hello, I'm Evan Nolan, the president and co-founder of the United States Athletics Hall of Fame, here with the first-time nominee for the class of 2024. Anthony Frank Hawk, much better known to all of us as Tony Hawk, was born May 12, 1968 in San Diego, California, and there's no doubt that he is the OG of the sport of skateboarding. Now, he was the youngest of 4 children, and as a child was hyperactive, and also really hated losing. He actually had a baseball game that he struck out and ran into a ravine to hide and had to be convinced to come back out. So when he took up the sport of skateboarding, his parents were actually really happy about it because it was a way for him to burn off some of this extra energy from his hyperactivity. But then he got really good at it really fast. As a matter of fact, by the time he was 13, he made his first national television appearance on a 1981 episode of Captain Kangaroo, where he played a character named Skateboard Johnny. I highly recommend you go find that clip. It's about 2 minutes long. See how good he is and really how terrible Captain Kangaroo was. It's a show if you've never seen it before. Now, by the time he was 16, he was thought to be the greatest skateboarder in the world and was sponsored by multiple companies. And by the time he graduated from Torrey Pines High School, he had made enough money skateboarding to buy his first house. He would spend the 80s skating competitions throughout the world, and by the time he was 25, he'd entered 103 competitions, won 73 of them, and finished second in an additional 19, which is a record that has just never been touched by any other skateboarder ever. But then came 1991, where skateboarding's popularity took a massive nosedive. Sponsorships dried up, and many of his contemporaries had to go on to work on other pursuits. Not Hawk, though. He would bet on himself and on the sport. He'd actually refinance his house and started his own skateboard company called Birdhouse, which was appropriate because his nickname is the Bird. There's a ton of uncertainty with Birdhouse as it wasn't profitable for the first few years. But just as quickly as the money dried up, the sport rocketed back to the forefront in 1999, with Hawk and Birdhouse there at the front as its champions. Now, part of the reason for the resurgence was the X Games, which brought sports that were popular with young folks but fairly niche in the national consciousness to national television. But more importantly, really, was the creation of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater video game franchise, which is now in its 17th iteration and has more than $1.4 billion in sales over the years. But it wasn't just the business side where Hawk was dominating. He was also innovating on the skateboard. In 1999, he became the first skateboarder to ever land a 900, which is a trick in which you rotate 2.5 times around, landing on the skateboard again. He'd retired from skateboarding actually in that 1999 season, with the exception of the X Games, where he'd win the title in 2002 and 2003 as the top skateboarder before retiring for good. But he still hasn't walked away from the sport. He's truly skateboarding's champion and patron saint, standing firm in his belief when everyone else went their separate ways, and taking what was a niche sport not only to a global phenomenon, but an established Olympic event. And he's the only skateboarder on our list for a reason. He was an inaugural member of the Skateboarding Hall of Fame, and he's definitely going to be the first skateboarder in our hall as well. It's just a question of whether his first year gets him in or not. And that's going to be up to you. You can vote for Tony Hawk or any of our other nominees for United States Athletics Hall of Fame at www.theusahf, that's the United States Athletics Hall of Fame.com, just shortened. Voting will continue between now and December 1st when we make our announcement. You vote as often as you'd like, but make sure it's only once a day. Now, I'll be back soon with another nominee, but until then, take care.